Thank you for joining us for AI Isn't Enough. Without governance, it sinks fast. I'm your host and moderator, Susan Pollock. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Precisely, and I'm joined today by two leaders from our Precisely product management team. Ken Butler, our Vice President of Product Management, who has over 25 years of experience, and Brian Link, our Senior Product Manager with over a decade of product management expertise. And I said that just to make you guys feel old, so I hope that's okay. What can I say, right? I know your time's valuable out there. We appreciate you joining us today. So we're going to try and pack a lot of material into 15 or 20 minutes here and create kind of a podcast-like feel to our webinar today. And so Ken and Brian are going to go unscripted, and we'll share some of their thoughts on the state of data governance today, best practices on what's most effective, and share their thoughts on how AI is impacting and being impacted by data governance. I'm going to start off with a question just to get us going here, kind of a controversial question. Is data governance dead as we know it? Who wants to go first?
I'll take this one too. So I often equate this to, just is navigation dead because we got rid of paper maps? I would argue the answer is no. So I do think though the old governance is on its way out. New governance I think is thriving, and it's completely different, and it's even more critical than it used to be. So my thought on this is that the shift here was governance was built in a world where data moves slowly through databases, powered monthly reports, right? And that model kind of broke when data velocity kind of increased exponentially and AI entered the picture recently, right? And think of it this way, and I always love this moniker of data is the new oil, right? And so if data is the new oil, governance is effectively the refinery, right? And we've been running refineries from the 1950s into 2025, right? And so this new model kind of embeds throughout the entire pipeline. So you get quality controls, privacy protection, classification happen in real time kind of data flows, and it really is not as an afterthought anymore. So kind of the fundamental change here was in how I kind of wrap this all up is that I feel like it's moved from more of a permission-based to more of an enablement-based governance. So, for example, like an old model of you take a request, you wait weeks for approval, and then you miss your market opportunity. Whereas the new model is, you have a self-service platform with built-in controls that manage all that stuff and let your teams move at kind of the speed that they need to, all while staying compliant. So, now I also feel like governance was already kind of heading down this path. Kind of the digital transformation over the last decade, it was kind of pushing things there. But then AI arrived and kind of, turned this evolution into more of a revolution. And what might have taken a decade to change happened in 2 years, I think? Like this whole AI thing came onto the scene real fast. And so I think AI kind of accelerated this transformation and kind of made the stakes higher. And what I mean by that is that, bad data and traditional pipelines, right? You fixed it in one report, but bad data in AI gets amplified at kind of a machine scale. So I think the bottom line here in my mind is that, modern governance isn't about control. It's more about enabling kind of a responsible speed. Think of a speed limit, for example, right? Like there's a reason there's speed limits there. It's a responsible speed. And I think kind of governance is kind of more in that, and modern governance is more into that space.
It's a good point, Brian. I think the only thing that I would add, and I like all of your analogies, I would never be able to duplicate those. But I think since you brought up the speed limit thing, the thing that I think about is that data governance is your seatbelt, because there's going to be times where you speed and you want to be safe while you're doing it. And no matter what happens within this industry, whether it's a game-changing thing like AI or the push to the cloud 10, 15 years ago, you still want to ensure that the data can be properly owned, governed, and adheres to your company's policies and standards, no matter what the technology is backing it.
So to that point, Ken, let me ask you guys a little bit about, everyone used to think governance was all about compliance. I think that's changed an awful lot as well, right? It's not all about what you can't do, to your point, but it is how can we embed things so that it moves faster? Does that make sense? Is that something that kind of goes along with what you guys are talking about?
I think I'll take this one.
Yeah.
I think compliance is going to be more important, more so now than it has been in the past. because as we continue to feed our AI models and this velocity of data continues to increase, there are very real issues that happen when you're not compliant. Take the GDPR, for example. The bottom line there is if you go against the GDPR and you're found, essentially guilty, it's 4% of your net revenue. And you need to be sure that the AI models you're training and the results that you're leveraging don't have PII data propagated throughout your entire data ecosystem. And really I think that's Brian's seatbelt analogy right there, is that the speed limit may be going from 55, but it's going to increase to 100. And you still want that seatbelt to keep you safe. And compliance is going to be part of that story.
That makes sense. And go ahead, Brian. Or
no, I would say, Lo, that's a perfect add-on to that analogy. Perfect add-on to that analogy, Ken.
Like it. So how is that impacting? I mean, we hear a lot about the business teams being a lot more involved than the technical teams, right? How do you see that evolving? Is the business first being something that is really at the forefront? I mean, that's what we're hearing from a lot of the analysts. What is your perspective on that?
Sure. So I think about this one. This one kind of resonates with me at kind of a deep level. As a product manager, you really kind of focus on outcomes and not output, right? Which I think is kind of the same kind of concept here when you're talking about business first governance. So, you start at the end of the work. What is it you're trying to achieve? And work backwards. So, business first governance really kind of starts with outcomes, not necessarily compliance. The question isn't like, what do we need? It's what are we trying to achieve, right? And so that one kind of sticks with me. And I often think of it like the modern data steward as really being more of a concierge and not necessarily like a bouncer, right? Like they help teams find the right data first rather than blocking access. They're embedded in the business unit, speaking the business language, and measure success by value delivered, not how many forms you filled out or whatever, whatever menial tasks that they have to do as a part of that process. So, this, in my mind, this scales because it has to. When everyone in your organization uses data, and let's be honest, in this world of AI, they all do. Governance has to move at the speed of the business, right? And so, my forethought on this is that I think companies winning today will have turned governance from a cost center into a competitive advantage. That's kind of my take on it.
And those are good points. I think when it comes to business first data governance, the thing that always comes to my mind is, what does that even mean? And
totally,
in my mind, what that means is that no one's doing data governance for fun, right? You don't do data governance to do data governance. There has to be a reason behind it. Now, the reason behind it doesn't necessarily have to be organizational wide. You don't have to make sure that you deliver trusted and high quality data to every single employee within your organization. Data governance can be at the project level, it can be at the team level, it can be at the business unit level, but there needs to be a reason behind it. And generally, in my mind, that's what business first data governance means.
Good point.
Yeah, that's the outcome, right? Like, what are you trying to focus on, Ken, right? That's kind of how I think of it too.
Good. Hey guys, I'm going to kind of change things up a little bit here. We're gonna do something that I'm gonna call the data point duel, right? And this is gonna be kind of rapid fire. We're gonna go give each of you an opportunity to talk about some quick thoughts on high value data governance use cases, why they matter, why they're a challenge, and how it delivers immediate value to an organization. Ken, I'm gonna let you start this one up. You get to start us. High value use case you'd like to talk about.
Okay, so the first one that almost always comes to my mind is trusted BI reporting. And the reason why this comes to my mind is that we all sit in our offices, whether they're at a building or virtually, like where I am with this fireplace. And we have our favorite BI report that we check weekly. Depending upon your role, maybe you check it daily. And so everyone has a report, and maybe it's business critical. It could be a customer retention risk report. It could be a quarterly sales pipeline report. But we use these reports to make data-driven decisions. But what tools have your organization provided to you that gives you the confidence that you can trust the data behind that report? And so I'm sure everyone listening to this, and even people on this call, have questioned something that they've seen in a report. And one of my favorite questions that we tend to ask people that are interested in data, going into data governance, is, if you do have a question on that report, who do you go to? Who owns that report? What's the quality of the data in that report? Where did the data come from? What happened to the data as it traveled to that report? And in the dark, dusty cobweb hallways of your data ecosystem, what happened to that data? And trusted BI reporting essentially allows our customers or anyone practicing data governance to build this metadata layer on top of their first-class citizens. And those first-class citizens would be Power BI or Tableau reports. It would be identifying critical data elements, it being able to understand the lineage or the provenance of how that data traveled from the source system all the way down to the BI report. And really, this is just like a bite-sized use case that I think is easy for anyone within an organization to understand, and it can deliver value quickly.
Yeah, good point. Everybody touches that, right? Brian, your turn. What are we going to go with?
I was just going to follow up with Ken on that one really quickly. Is that like I think this one hits home to me as I've been a victim of this. We'll call it that, where you're just not sure, right? And I think you can't trust your dashboards, you can't trust your models, and most organizations are trying to make strategic decisions based on these reports, which makes it even important. These are like rhythm of the business reports that a lot of decisions get made on, right? And I think that's to Ken's point. It's even more important to get those right. All right, over to me.
What do you got?
Let's go with I always, because I think this is going more traditional, but let's go with the privacy compliance. So a lot of things I hear are, privacy compliance is really kind of no longer optional. And if you're getting it wrong, as Ken mentioned earlier, it's 4% of revenue. Not to mention brand damage that it can ultimately be the cost of it, right? And so I like to use a little analogy here. Is I'm a dad, I'm a girl dad. I got two girls. Like the reality of it is that personal data is exactly like glitter. Once it's in your house, it's everywhere. So you'll find it, 6 months later in places you didn't even know existed. Same thing with PII in your systems, right? CRMs, backups, test environments, log files. It's everywhere, right? So kind of the solution of this is really kind of AI-powered discovery, I think, is going to be huge here. That kind of continuously maps personal data across your entire system, entire estate, right? For that perspective. But this isn't just about finding the data, right? It's about creating like these real-time inventory that updates as data moves and multiplies effectively, right? So where every data piece is, wherever personal data lives, you can actually respond to these deletion requests, GDPR, right? Provide compliance during audits, and most importantly, kind of use it strategically instead of defensively, right? And so when you do this right, when you handle privacy right, I think that customer trust becomes your kind of competitive weapon. You can use data others can't touch because you've earned the right through a demonstrated governance process. And to me, I think that's kind of the underlying value that I think most companies and businesses that are in this space are really trying to, ultimately, that's what they're trying to get at. Yes, privacy compliance is at that top layer, but I think ultimately they want we want to earn that trust. And I think that's far more valuable to a business like ours than avoiding the fines, right, for that company.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Ken, you got another one for us, or do you got a comment for
I've
Brian?
got so many, but I'll just give you one more. So I think, everyone's been talking about cloud modernization, and we've been hearing this for the last 15 years, but really over the last 5 years is where I've seen like a huge uptick in these actual modernization initiatives being planned out and going live. And the main reason for this is that the hyperscalers offer a whole host of analytics services, AI tooling, relational databases. And so everyone is taking their traditional on-prem data sources and they're shoving them into the cloud. And where are they going? They're going into Databricks, they're going to Snowflake, maybe they're going into GCP or Azure or some database within AWS. But all of the data is going up there. And what's starting to happen over time is that the consequence of that is that we're starting to lose track of where the data is being used. We're creating hundreds or even thousands of BI reports that may or may not be used. And we continue to push more and more data. And the impact of all of this is effectively us scratching our heads and trying to understand why our cloud costs keep rising month after month after month. And so to modernize is obviously good. I think it opens up the data ecosystem and kind of provides more access to everybody, but there's also consequences to that. And this data deprecation use case can leverage a lot of the capabilities that we support within the data integrity suite today. We can ingest the metadata for your BI reporting tools. We can easily connect that back to your on-prem data sources. And you can very easily, based upon usage and popularity metrics, understand what data is driving which reports and which reports are being used most often. And so maybe you take the bottom 25% of those reports that aren't being used, and you remove the data from your Databricks instance. And now you're going to reduce your costs over time. So that's just another real bite-sized, easy to understand use case specific to governance.
Actually, that's a real good one. I hadn't thought about that. Brian?
Bonus here, Ken, I was thinking about as you were talking there, is that, you know, it also directly kind of connects to privacy compliance, right? You can't handle deletion of requests if you don't know what to delete and where it lives, right? You know, and plus, if you also think about the things in the AI world, which everyone is, old data kind of actively degrades AI performance, right? When you're training your models on decades of digital crap that you haven't cleaned up, you're teaching your AI to be as confused as the data warehouse itself, right? So like smart deprecation is both, you know, risk reduction, performance improvement, and as you said, we kind of there's a cost element to it as well.
Yep, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
Yeah. Good. Brian, give us one more. What else you got?
Well, I've been prattling on and on about AI, so I might as well kind of jump into that arena of, I think let's talk about like the use case around like data readiness for AI and analytics. So I think to me, you know, data readiness determines whether your AI investment returns 10x or becomes an expensive science experiment. So I think the problem, I like to frame as kind of the problem, solution, result, but like the problem I think around this is that, you know, data scientists still spend about 80% of their time, I read, time on their data prep, which is cleaning, formatting, validating, you know, instead of building models, and it's just not that efficient. And ultimately why most AI initiatives fail. AI models are pattern finding machines. You know, you feed them bad data and they'll confidently find bad patterns and apply them at scale. That's how things in the AI world are going to start moving. So, you know, that's how you get your, you know, you end up having a recommendation engines that include, you know, exclude entire customer segments, or, you know, fraud detection that discriminates based on zip codes or something crazy like that, right? So I think the solution around a lot of this is governed data products. So pre-validated, documented with embedded quality metrics and lineage. You know, think of them as kind of like AI ready packages that data scientists and really everyone can kind of trust immediately. And I think packaging them up in that way is kind of a great solution and makes it accessible for everybody. So, and like the impact of this, right, is like when you get this right, you see, you know, the model development time cut in half, accuracy goes, you know, increases exponentially, you know, not necessarily through better algorithms, just through better data, right? So when your data is truly ready, AI projects deliver. When it's not, they die in proof of concept somewhere. They never get off the ground.
Good. It's, you know, it's always good that when we're talking about the elephant in the room, AI, it's the last thing we talk about, right? But what are you going to say? You're absolutely correct. So I'm not sure who won the data point duel. If our audience wants to drop comments into the chat, let us know who you think won, or maybe you have something that you thought, hey, why didn't Brian and Ken bring up this use case? Drop that in there as well. But appreciate you guys playing our game. I'll send you your prizes later on. You know, let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? Let's shift gears to talk about AI and how that's impacting governance. What kind of capabilities are you guys seeing that are really impacting data governance? Who wants to take this one first?
I'll take this. And it's something that isn't just necessarily impacting data governance practitioners, right? It's everybody looking at AI, and what they're questioning is, how is this going to impact my job? And there's probably some weariness out there, but I think at this point in time, you need to lean into it. So right now, AI is not going to be replacing the need for data governance. It's not going to be replacing the people and roles that are typically involved in data governance. The way I see AI right now, no matter what your role is it's going to be acting like a force multiplier. You can use it to become more efficient. You can use it to optimize your processes, and you can lean into it to help you out professionally or personally. probably more so professionally. But when I look at some of the vendors out there, Precisely included, and there's really two main pillars where I see AI capabilities being created for. One is the automation of manual processes and tasks. This is the arduous, manual, labor-intensive part of the job, typically done by data stewards. And the second is insight generation. And really, when we talk to our customers, or maybe we talk to a potential customer, we always hear two main questions. It's, how do I understand the return of investment on my data governance tool? That's insight generation. That should be a lot easier to do. And how do I understand the rate of adoption? And in order to increase adoption, you need to make the lives of people and their jobs easier when it comes to the data governance tool. So really, it's going to come down to automation of like metadata classification and tagging. It'll be automated policy generation, execution, and monitoring. And finally, I think AI will likely prioritize stewardship work by highlighting the data assets that have the biggest business risk or value. But ultimately, if you think about how do we get to those recommendations, it's really the manual tedious work that data stewards are doing today, but being able to greatly scale that out across the entire enterprise.
Brian, you had some thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, so I was thinking about how kind of Precisely helps with AI governance, and kind of to jump off of Ken's point there of I think what Precisely is doing is really trying to help companies build governance infrastructure that adapts as regulations evolves. And like I think there's kind of three critical areas of, first there's this transparency, right? Building our trusted BI foundation to make AI decisions explainable and auditable. Boards need to understand not just what AI decides, but why. So having that transparency and reasoning kind of behind it. Second is really kind of the compliance element. So extending privacy capabilities into AI governance. Every new regulation, let's take the EU AI Act, right? Something we're focusing on now, requires knowing what data your models use and how, right? And then I think third is performance. And so smart data deprecation becomes crucial. As Ken mentioned, bad data doesn't just waste storage, it degrades model performance and amplifies a lot of the risk, right, associated with that data. So like the key is really kind of building governance into AI development from day one. I think, companies that see like Precisely, we're seeing this as an accelerator, not a brake, are the ones that are really going to truly capture that AI value and magic.
That's really it. Like I said, I think we wanted to do a fast and furious 15 or 20 minutes on data governance and where it's headed. AI is obviously impacting it greatly, and in a positive way is what I think we're hearing here. So thank you, Ken and Brian, for sharing your thoughts. I want to encourage our audience to share their questions in the chat. And you know what? Let us know what other topics you want to hear about. If this format works for you, where we can, put a lot of information into a short amount of time to keep you up to speed, we want to continue doing that. So let us know what you want to hear about. And other than that, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having us, Sue. Thanks, everybody.